Hello everyone, welcome. I want to continue with my series of videos about giving and receiving. I said in the last video that I made that there's an exchange process that occurs in human activities and in nature. And when it comes to human interactions, or interactions with good and evil, there is an exchange process that always occurs. You give something and you receive something. It's an exchange. You might look at it just like in our in commerce. You work and then you get a paycheck. You go to the store and you pay money and then you get items. You get items. And in human relations, there's often some sort of a interaction, isn't there? You know, you scratch my back and I'll scratch your back, that sort of thing. Well, that's funny little saying, but the topic is actually quite serious. There's an exchange process that goes on. And it is so profound that people actually exchange identities, which is what I said in the last video. But more. See, and how does this exchange process come about? Well, there are simple, basic exchange processes. You know, you agree to do some work for someone, and in exchange they give you money. That's a simple thing. But when it comes to our personality, when it comes to life itself, then the exchange process can either be good or not good. And for the most part, for us fallen humans, it's not good. You see people exchange identities. You see them become like each other. Kids become like their parents, and their parents are like their parents before them. See, you can see the employees take on the personality of the boss. See, you can see people take on a personality, but you can also see, if you have eyes to see, people actually take on the identity of someone who they idolized or someone who they hated. See, let's talk about the negative side of it, and then there's the positive aspect. The positive aspect is what Christ came to do. Okay. But let's talk about what we're most familiar with, and that's the negative aspect. You go through life and you gradually lose your identity. You become like everything else and everybody else. And finally, you don't even know who you are. I saw in the newspaper today some very telling quotes from popular actors and actresses and dancers and performers. And 2 or 3 of them, they basically said, either I'm just acting. My whole life, all I do is act. I don't know who I am. Others said, I'm looking for myself, for who I am. Who am I? You see? A lot of people feel that way. You want to be yourself, but what is yourself? Yourself has become a composite of what you have. So how does this interaction take place then, this negative interaction? Well, it occurs when we interact with temptation. That's the simplest way of putting it. When we interact with temptation, there's an exchange process that goes on. Okay? So I think that you can understand. An exchange process that goes on when you interact with temptation. Okay? Now, or when you use someone as temptation. See? But let's say, simple example. Somebody says something mean to you, something that's not true, you know, something that's a lie, that's about you, and then you resent that person. Okay? Well, what happens when you resent that person? Well, you become angry, you become upset, you become resentful. And when you do, don't you kind of fall away from what you could have been? See, what you could have been. You could have been a prince or a princess. See, And people, great people that we read about in novels or in real life, they hang on to themselves, to the real them. And that real them has patience and kindness and long-suffering and wisdom and understanding and courage and a beautiful virtue. See, that's what you would have been. But the moment you resent someone, you fall away from that. See, just like Adam fell away from paradise, he lost it. He became an animal in a jungle hell. Well, isn't that what happens to you the moment you resent someone or resent anything? You fall away from from the noble, gracious, wise, thoughtful, forgiving, understanding person you could have been, and you become what? You become immediately diminished. You feel you're diminished. You feel the loss. You feel the emptiness. See? And then what do? You resent even more and blame the other person. See? And then there's another diminished. You can become so diminished through your resentments. See, especially someone near you that you resent all the time. See, your wife, your husband, your mom, see, your parent, someone who you resent all the time. You become so diminished that you don't even know who you are anymore. Then you go out looking. You see, actresses trying to find themselves. They're trying to find it in the world. They're trying to find love in the world, validation in the world. They're trying to find who they are. See? And they put on quite an act, don't they? Sometimes. Sometimes the people that you see on the stage or on television, or the life of the party types, or the very clever types, make everybody laugh, the comedians, inside, they're empty. It's all a compensation. But anyway, let's get back to the very simple point. The minute you resent someone, you're diminished. Now, the other thing is the minute you idolize someone. It says in the Bible we're not to make idols. See, if you idolize anyone, it should be your creator. If you are in awe of anyone, if you worship anyone, if you love, see, the good, it should be your creator. Christ said, "Why do you call me good? There's no one good but my Father in heaven." See? But when you worship someone else, now why do you worship someone else? You look up to them, you admire them, you think well of them. Why? Well, first of all, you want something from them. Remember the exchange process? You want them to think well of you. You worship them so that they will worship you back, or think well of you, or give you some perks, see, of some sort. Okay? Or you want a piece of them. Now we're getting back to this identity thing again, this identity exchange. You want a piece of them. If you set them up on a pedestal because they are good, or you pretend they're good, or they pretend that they're good, see, and you want a piece of them, well, be careful because you may get a piece of them. If you hate someone, or if you hold them up, and put them on a pedestal to worship them, to get something from them, to get their blessing, their approval, their reassurance, or their something from them, then you will get a piece of them. But what you get is not so good. See, remember, we're dealing with temptation. We're dealing with temptation. So it's a step down. So maybe there's a person who's a decent person. They're not trying to tempt you. They don't want anything from you. See? They're just going about their business, but they happen to have some kind of virtue. They have beauty, or they have gracefulness, or they have courage, or they have intelligence. They have something that you want. You put them up on a pedestal, and then so you're playing a game with them. But they have to be careful. See, there's danger for them. See, there's also robbery. We talked about exchange. Remember? You give someone some money, and in exchange they do work for you, that sort of thing. But there's also robbery, isn't there? It's stealing, taking something that doesn't belong to you, or sneaking in and taking something without somebody's noticing it. So a skilled tempter. See, remember, when you want someone from somebody to take something that's undeserved, or to get something, to get a piece of them, okay, then there's danger for them and for you too. See, because you do lose yourself. You won't get their goodness. See, true goodness from within. See, real goodness you can't take. See, we'll talk more about that later. See, Christ can willingly can take your sins upon himself and dissolve them in his purity and give you something of his identity. See, a new nature. Now you see what it means to be reborn again? See, what nature do you have now? You have the identity, see, that you inherit, the sin, the fallen identity, the prideful identity that you inherit all the way back to Adam and Eve, plus the identities of the people who you've interacted with, who you've hated, resented, judged, admired, worshipped, idolized. See? So that's what you have. You have all of that and more. See, when you get someone's identity, you also get what goes along with it. You can actually get their sicknesses. The transfer of sickness can actually take place. A real identity exchange and the identity of, along with the identity of the illness, the sickness. Or you get their identity, and then when you become like them, then you have their weakness, their propensity. See? So in the family, a lot of times the child or the adult child is worried that they're going to have a heart attack or cancer or something like their parent, who they hated. See? Now, it can be inherited. I mean, it can be inherited traits. Okay? But it can also be because of the exchange of identity. A person can literally feel that they're becoming like their parent and then worry that they're going to get cancer like the parent because, see, they have some of the identity of the parent, that identity which is prone to that sort of thing, okay, which I can go into in another video, which I've written about in some of my books. Now you see this identity exchange. So getting back to the decent person, the innocent person, who is just, decent person. Yes, that person is in danger of losing, of having some of his virtue, some of his substance robbed, physical substance, and also spiritual substance robbed by someone, taken from him through the interaction, an unhealthy interaction. See, so you see how there's danger from people. People want something. Sometimes there's something lurking in people. See, and beneath the smile. See, so that's why you see a little bit of this. You see the value in meditating for a little bit of distance, proper meditation, like I share with people. Meditate for a mental distance. You can stand back, not be so close, not be so emotional, not be so involved with people and into people. Like expression, I'm into this or into that. Because when you do, see, then that exchange process, because it's almost all of our, I'm sorry to say, but almost all of our interactions with people around us are temptation experience, temptation. See, if you meet someone who's not tempting in any way, that person is most likely to go about their business in a matter-of-fact way. See, and to you they might seem cold. They say that person's cold, aloof, or I can't do anything, can't do it, get anywhere with that person. See, we're so the temptation experiences. So beware of people. But meditate for mental distance. Remember Christ, he would often go off by himself to pray. Sure, he was around people. When he was with people, he loved them. He helped them. See, but he also needed time to be by himself, alone time. See, there's a difference between lonely and alone. I can be alone, but without being lonely. But when you're around people, it gets very sticky and very enmeshing. Okay? So you need to become centered and learn not to leak, not to give off your energy, not to give your life to others. And in the next video, I hope to make one about giving and receiving. When should you give something to a homeless person? When should you give a couple of bucks and when not? When should you do something for your child, or should you not? See, there's a wisdom in it and a timing in it. It's very important how you give and how you receive. Very important. So I'm getting to that. It's very practical, and it could save your life. See, because as it is now, you're leaking energy all over the place, and you're losing your identity and gaining others' identity, and it's never good. Okay. So I'm going to make an end to this video now, and please join me in the next video, Lord willing, about this topic.